Hey guys, it's Jessica. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be reviewing all of the books that I read in May. May was a pretty good reading month. I got through 10 books, not my entire TBR, but a majority of it, which I'm really pleased about. I had no real bad books this month, I wouldn't say. I had a bunch of 5-star reads, so many, especially new releases that were really great. I did complete a series. It was a pretty good month. So I'm going to go through and I am going to review for you all of the books that I finished in May. And these reviews are going to be spoiler free as much as I can. If there's anything that I think is even a little bit of a spoiler, I will warn you. So fear not. I'm going to start with the first book that I read, and we're just going to go in chronological order. So the first book that I read in the month was Hamnet by Maggie O'Farrell. This is a historical fiction book that focuses on the kind of lesser known backstory of the play Hamlet. And it is very much about Shakespeare's family and particularly his son, whose name is Hamnet. This book has the subtitle Hamnet, a Novel of the Plague. So I think you know right off the bat that it is perhaps not going to be a cheery book, but I really enjoyed it. It was beautifully written. It is very much about grief and motherhood and loss and family and what it means to have someone in your family who does not entirely belong to you, who also belongs to the public. And I will say that the thing that stands out to me the most about this book is its portrayal of grief. If you have ever experienced the loss of someone who is extremely close to you, I think that you may see yourself in the character of Agnes, who is Shakespeare's wife in this. I found it extremely moving. I did have a few minor issues with this book, primarily that Shakespeare himself, I was expecting it to be much more about Shakespeare, but he is actually absent for, I would say, the majority of the book. This is not his story. It is very much about his family. And I wasn't expecting that, but I did really enjoy his family. I thought that the second half of the book dragged a little bit for me in places. But having said that, I did really enjoy it. For me, this is going to come out to either a 3.75 or 4-star rating. I thought it was very good. I don't know that it's quite an all-time favorite for me or anything, but if you are looking for a complicated portrayal or very realistic portrayal of what grief is like, then I would recommend this. It's pretty heavy, to be honest, and I would be aware of that. And I might recommend that you look up a few trigger warnings for it before you start, if you have any things that are difficult for you to read about. But overall, this is my first Maggie O'Farrell book, and I really enjoyed it, and I would definitely read more from this author. After reading historical fiction, a heavy historical fiction to start out my month, I did move on to The Light Brigade by Cameron Hurley. This is, first of all, such a striking cover, and it goes with my shirt. Very into that. I love the cover. It is a space opera that is about a group of soldiers who are able to travel to faraway places by basically kind of being disassembled at the molecular level and sent to other destinations, and how that can sometimes go awry, shall we say. I'm going to be a little bit vague on this one because it has a lot of things that I think would be spoilers for me to talk about, so I will not. But I will say that the world this is set in is very much a dystopian society, and it falls very neatly into what I would consider to be kind of militaristic dystopian fiction, kind of in the vein of something in some ways, kind of like a 1984. But I don't think the themes in this book go quite as hard as some of the themes in those books do. But I did really enjoy the exploration of propaganda and what it can do to a society that goes on within this book. It was a little bit deeper, actually, than I was expecting. I was expecting kind of a popcorn book, and there are a lot of aspects to this book that are very popcorny. It's very exciting and fast moving, but it definitely has a deeper and a darker message if that's something that you like to get out of your science fiction. This is my first book by this author. I thought the writing was very strong. I didn't think the characters were as strong as a lot of the themes and the overall plot structure of the book, which I really enjoyed. Our main character in this book is Dietz, a recruit who has kind of something to prove, who is a member of a group that is a little bit on the outs within this society, which is very much ruled by the corporations that enable people to live within it. So, again, corporate dystopian. This is a familiar thing, especially if you watch a lot of my videos, because I love books that are about this topic. And so Dietz enters as a recruit and is very, very much all go on the mission and wanting to prove themselves and all of those things. And it doesn't end up quite the way that you would think. And I don't know, there's a lot of stuff in this book, again, that I'm not going to spoil. The structure of it is very, very interesting. And it was a little bit confusing at times, but not in a bad way. I would highly recommend it. If you want a comp title for this, I would probably give you The Forever War by Haldeman. And it's not as strong probably as that book is, because that book is, a classic, but I really enjoyed it and I don't see a lot of people reading it. So if you like science fiction and you like twisty science fiction that you got to think about a little bit, this would definitely be a good one to read. The next book I picked up in the month was Fairy Tale by Stephen King. And this is the book that you all chose for me in my backlist battle video as the book that I needed to pick up and read this month. And I did complete it. So I'm going to talk about it and I'm going to give you my rating for this book, but I'm going to explain why a little bit so that you understand. And I am going to have to talk some about the second half of this book because I don't think I can review it without doing that. But I'm going to do my best not to spoil any plot points, but just be aware that because of the structure of the book, I am going to have to talk about some structural things in the book that happen a little bit later, but no plot spoilers. I would say that this book feels very much like two books in one. So we have the story of Charlie. Charlie is a kid who has had kind of a difficult life. His mother passed away very young. His father has had a lot of problems, and he had to grow up very early on. He had to take care of his father, who previously had had a serious drinking problem. And things are going better for him now. His father's gotten help. He's on a lot of sports teams at school. He has friends. It seems like he's kind of getting it together. And then near the beginning of the book, he meets an old man named Mr. Bowditch, who lives in a mysterious house in his neighborhood that, of course, everyone thinks is haunted, and he's some kind of a wizard. You know how it goes. And he has a dog. The dog's name is Radar. He's a German Shepherd. She is a German Shepherd. And a lot of the first half of the book, the whole first half of the book, I would say, is very much about Charlie's relationship with this old man and with the dog. The kind of boy and his dog tropes that go on in this are pretty intense, actually. I was very invested. I was very, very, very invested in Charlie's story and what was going on in this mysterious house with this mysterious man. I really, up until I would say probably about the 50% mark, this was edging on a 5-star read for me. I think Stephen King, I love Stephen King, and I think he does such a good job writing these kind of small town coming of age stories. It's kind of his bread and butter, if you will, outside of his the scary things. But at about 50% of the book, we do have a change, and it's not really, I don't think, a spoiler to say that this is a portal fantasy. There is, in fact, a portal on the front cover. We don't get there until about 50% of the way through the book. And the part of the book that didn't work to me was actually the part that takes place in the fantasy land. And that's the reason for my ultimate rating for this book, which is about a 3.5, because I just didn't have a good time. I did like some things. Stephen King very cleverly mixes a lot of traditional fairy tale tropes and actual things that are lifted directly from fairy tales in the story in the second half of the book. I really enjoyed that. But I felt like our main character, Charlie, changed a little bit when he went to the fantasy land. I felt like his character, who was very grown up and had really come into his own in the first half of the book, just kind of became a standard kind of fantasy character trope at that point, and that I did not enjoy. So I'm going to be very honest. I loved the first half of the book. I adored Radar, the German Shepherd. Best book dog ever. I didn't like the second half, which is the fantasy part, and I think that's really funny. but I just did not care for it. It's also extremely long. And I think that if we had perhaps condensed some things in this book down, I mean, it's Stephen King. Nobody's going to tell him, no, sir, do not write a 600-page book. But I don't know that this book needed to be 600 pages long. So it doesn't mean I didn't like it. And it doesn't mean that it's not a recommendation, because I think that you kind of have to judge for yourself how you're going to feel about this kind of thing. My closest comp title for this is actually going to be The Lost Story by Meg Schaffer, which is a book I didn't really like. And again, I think it was because I liked the things in the real world and then I didn't like the magical portal fantasy part. So maybe this is a me thing. I don't know. But I felt like it was two books in one and I liked one of those books. So that's going to be why my ultimate rating for this is going to be a 3.5. But Stephen King, I love Stephen King. The writing was great. I feel bad I didn't like it more, but I still had a pretty good time reading it. So still a success. After that, I picked up another fantasy book. This one was on my Our Fantasy Bingo card, so I definitely wanted to get to it this year. And that is A Winter's Promise by Christelle Dabos. This is the first book in a 4-book young adult series called the Mirror Visitor series. I am going to end up with this one. I will tell you at about a 4-star rating, but I've got to talk about it because I had quite the journey with this one. Our main character in this book is named Ophelia, and she comes from a world that has been kind of fractured, I think, from the earth. The world building within this, I think in the first book, I had a very difficult time picturing exactly what was going on. I think that we have these kind of like floating islands that are above the surface of the earth where you cannot live. And they all have different magic systems, the people that live in them, these different nations, and they don't seem to like each other very much. So our main character, Ophelia, finds herself betrothed, kind of against her will, to a man who is very powerful in one of the other kingdoms. So she travels off with only her aunt as her guardian to meet his family and to arrange the wedding and kind of to find her way in this world that is very, very different from everything that she has ever known. Her skill is that she is a reader. She can read things if she touches them. She can see kind of the feelings and motivations of the people who have touched those objects before. But it was very much a fish out of water story. So my big comp title for this book is going to be actually Alice in Wonderland. I cannot explain to you why this book felt so much like Alice in Wonderland, except we are in this kingdom and we're hanging out with all of these nobles and rich people who are just so over the top crazy. It felt, and our main character just felt the entire time like she did not know what was going on. It was so incomprehensible. And the characters themselves, particularly toward the beginning of the book, to me felt a little bit cartoony, a little bit over the top. I did struggle feeling that that there was no one for me to kind of attach myself to except our main character, Ophelia, who I do like. The rest of them didn't quite feel real, including the love interest, who I think starts out very cold and very distant. And I struggle with that in books with a romance because a lot of the times, we're supposed to say, oh, well, he thought out and that's romantic. But I don't always think that's romantic necessarily. I think sometimes that can be toxic. And I was really concerned that that's how this was going to turn out. But the book took some plot turns as we got more into it. And I did end up feeling like he was thawing out a little bit. I was understanding what was going on a little bit more, and I am now excited to read the second book. But it was, I would say, quite the journey. And again, I would compare it to Alice in Wonderland, or just in terms of the fish out of water feel, something like The Goblin Emperor, which is a book that I really like, where the main character just does not know how to navigate all of these court politics that are just so over the top. It was a very slow burn romance, and I have heard that before I started this series, that don't look for anything to happen for, books between the love interests, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. It was, I would say, the slowest burn I've ever seen, though. It was so slow. But I did really enjoy it. I am going to give it a 4-star. I am going to read the second book and kind of hope that the world building continues from here. It was very different from your standard young adult series. It was not tropey. It did not feel like all of the other young adult romanticities that I've read, and that is definitely a plus. Would I recommend it? Yeah, I think give it a try. It's something different. Next, I have The Oleander Sword by Tasha Suri. And I will tell you that after I finished this book, I went ahead and read the Lotus Empire, which is the final book in the Burning Kingdoms trilogy. So I did complete this trilogy this month. I gave 5 stars to The Jasmine Throne when I read it, which was only last month. I loved it. Indian-inspired fantasy. I loved how different that was. I loved the characters. I loved how kind of unapologetically fierce the female characters were within this book. It did not feel like they had to be demure or sweet or cute. They could want power. They could want to do things that were maybe kind of morally gray. And I just don't feel like you see that enough in fantasy. So I thought that was really refreshing. I really enjoyed it. So I read the second book, which continues the story of Priya and Malini, are characters who are in love with one another. Malini is the princess of this kingdom that has kind of taken over and occupied Priya's place. Priya has some, I'm keeping it really vague here for spoiler reasons. Priya has some powers of her own, and Malini is trying to take down her brother and regain control of her kingdom. I really love the second book. The ending was pretty good. There are some things that happened at the ending of the second book that stressed me out, but I really enjoyed it. This was another 5-star, so I had to start The Lotus Empire immediately. Now, The Lotus Empire, okay, so third books in a series, in a trilogy, are always so difficult because I think by the time you get to a final book, you have an idea of how you would like to see it end. And if it doesn't end that way, sometimes that can feel disappointing. I liked the third book. I didn't like it as much as I liked the other two. I thought that I thought it was a little meandering. I thought there were too many points of view, and we didn't spend quite as much time with our characters that we had come to love as we had in the first 2 books. But having said that, I would absolutely recommend the trilogy. I love these. It's one of my favorite fantasy series that I have read in quite some time. I don't know how to explain why these are so good. I think you just have to read it. So this is a pretty high recommendation for me. Absolutely loved it. You definitely need to check out the Burning Kingdom trilogy. I have completed it and I can give you my recommendation. The whole series is probably about a 4-star, and that is great. Before I move on to the next book, I do just want to say thank you to everyone who has been commenting and liking and subscribing my videos. I am very close to 1,000 subscribers, and I am planning on doing a Q&A when I get there. So I am asking for questions for the Q&A. They could be bookish questions, they could be life questions, anything you think you might like to know. You can go ahead and leave that as a comment on this video, or I'm gonna also do a community post when I do hit 1,000 subscribers, and you can leave your questions there. But I did want to say thank you. And if you're new here and enjoying the video, or if you've been watching my videos for a while, I would really love it if you would consider subscribing. It does help the channel out. It helps me out more than you would think. And I am so thankful that you are here. So with that, let's move on to the next book, which is The Incandescent by Emily Tesh. I loved this book. This book and the next 2 books after this. I have a reading blog of my experience reading. So I'm going to try to not talk about them for 20 minutes, but it's going to be hard because I love them so much. This book is kind of a love letter to academia and teaching and British boarding schools. It's also a little bit cozy. It's also got demons and demon hunters. It's also dark. It's so many different things. Oh, and did I mention it's also super funny? I just really love this book. Emily Tesh, I had also read Some Desperate Glory by her, which is a space opera, a military space opera that is very, very different from what I got here. I was not sure what I was going to expect going into it, whether or not it was going to kind of keep that dark tone, which is actually kind of what I was expecting that we had in Some Desperate Glory. But this book actually has the best sense of humor. And I would also say it's very obvious that Emily Tesh herself is a teacher, because if you've ever worked in academia, man, everything she says about the faculty members in the school year and faculty meetings and new teachers and experienced, man, because I spent a long time working in that world, and you kind of see yourself there a little bit. I really loved it. And it was so affectionate. It's also very funny. This is a world where demons can infect anything that is a person or that you have personified. For instance, there is, early on in the book, we find out that there is a demon that has infested and possessed the copy machine. And if you've ever worked in a school or even an office, you've had your moments when you wondered about the copy machine, right? This book was great. It also has a romance, a sapphic romance that I would say is pretty subtle. There's not too much of it, but what we had, I really enjoyed. I just thought all of the characters were really well done. It was very funny. It kind of went to places that I wasn't expecting, but I would also warn you that it is not fast paced. It takes its time. You're kind of working your way through the entire school year, term by term. And at times it does feel like, where am I going? What is the central plot line of this book? But when you get there, oh my goodness, it takes off. I don't know. I thought it was really great. This one, all three of these next books, I'm just going to tell you, were my favorites of the month. This one is sitting, 4.5, 5 stars. And I would highly recommend it. And my comp title for this book is going to be Harry Potter, but it's going to be Harry Potter if it were written from the perspective of all of the professors who were trying to keep these kids alive. And how can you not want to read that, right? Loved it. The next book that I read is The Devils by Joe Abercrombie, and this was my very first experience with a Joe Abercrombie book. It was definitely something that I really enjoyed, and kind of unexpectedly, to be honest. So first, can we take a moment just to admire the kind of general design of this book, which is got these gorgeous pictures. It also has a naked hardback that is so lovely. Love that. I don't know if I love the outside cover design nearly as much as I like the inside. So I might actually just take the dust jacket off. But anyway, so this book is about an alternate medieval Europe where the church has been split into two halves. It's not quite the Catholic Church that we actually had. It's a little bit different. I'm not going to spoil how. You're going to want to read it. And we have characters who are basically part of a band of kind of like misfit characters. A lot of them have like some kind of a magical power. We have a werewolf, we have a vampire, we've got a magician, all those different tropes. We have a monk who was hoping he was going to get a great position with the Vatican and ended up being in charge of these guys. And they're all trying to get a princess to another country to get her back on her throne. So it's definitely a journey story, a quest story. It's also very funny, but I will tell you that in probably the first, 10, 15% of the book, I seriously considered DNFing it because the humor at the very beginning of the book is so aggressive. It is just non-stop, and I think it's a little bit much. But as you keep reading the book, it does calm down a little bit. And the style of humor, I would say, is a little bit juvenile, especially in the beginning. As I said, it does get better. So I'm not really sounding like I enjoyed the book. So what happened? So what happened is, as we kept going and we learned more about these characters and their backstories, we learned that they were not just two-dimensional cutouts, right? That they were characters who felt real to me. And they did form kind of their little band of misfits, found family. And you know how much I love a found family story. And that's not what I was really expecting from this book. I don't know what I was expecting from this book. I just know that I have never read a Joe Abercrombie book other than half of The Blade itself, which I don't think I finished, but I am going to read now. And I really enjoyed it. I've seen mixed reviews for this. And I think the reason why you're going to see mixed reviews of this is because of that sense of humor. And I would say it's not exactly my sense of humor necessarily. Like the humor in The Incandescent was probably a much better style for me than this, which was very over the top in a Suicide Squad kind of way. But in the end, I don't know. It was kind of heartwarming. I don't know how to explain it. And it is the start of a series, and they are all kind of episodic, I believe, kind of standalone-y. I just had a really great time. And Joe Abercrombie has a reputation for being really great at drawing characters. And I definitely think, having read this, that is well deserved. So this one's going to be 5 stars, 5-star rating. Definitely recommend The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. I have 2 more books that I read in May to get through. The first one is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. This is a brand new release that I devoured in 2 days, which should probably tell you something. I loved it. I just absolutely loved it. And I am somebody who is difficult to please with a romantasy. I need the world building to be good. I need the relationship to not be toxic. And I just need to feel like there's a balance. If I wanted to read a romance novel, I'd read a romance novel. I need to feel like this is a fantasy that has a romance in it, not that everything would fall apart if we took the romance out of the book. Does that make sense? It doesn't mean I don't like romantasy or that I think there's anything wrong with it. It just means I'm a little bit picky for what I personally enjoy, and this was a good one. I loved her other series, the Shepherd King duology. This is also the start of a duology, and the cover, which I have described as bizarre, I think before in a video, because she's like, we're in two different outfits there, does make sense after you read the book. So this is the story of Sybil. Sybil is a diviner, which means that she lives in an abbey. She was taken there as a foundling, as an orphan, as a very young child, and she learned to drown. And when she drowns, she has visions. And people will pay money. They'll come to the abbey, they'll pay money to the abbess, and she dreams these visions that tell them things about their future. Now, obviously, everything in this world is not going to be exactly the way that it seems. One day, the king comes, the new king, the young king, and asks for his fortune to be told. And Sybil is the one who is chosen. And a lot of things happen from there. She goes on a journey, and there are a lot of twists that I definitely do not want to spoil. So I'm going to be really super vague about this one, especially because it just came out. But I would say if you're on the fence, or if you're somebody who sometimes likes romance in your fantasy books, but you don't necessarily love a lot of the romances that are out there, I would say that this one is going to be a great one to read. I just really enjoyed it. It has a very dark gothic feel. Rachel Gillig is really good at using language that makes you feel like you're really there within the world. And I just really, really enjoyed it. In terms of the romance, it was fine. I mean, there wasn't so much of it within this book. I would say too, like it wasn't over the top with the romance. It was there. Didn't even start romancing until probably 60% of the way through the book, which again, as I said before, I think earlier, I like a slow burn. I do not like things to be fast. No, sir. I like a slow burn. So this was great for me. I would highly recommend it. This again is 4.5, 5 stars. One of my favorite books of the year, probably. Really, really enjoyed it. And I would highly recommend it. One final book. One final book that I read in May, and that's going to be The River We Remember by William Kent Kruger. This is my first book by the author, who I know has written a lot of books that are very critically acclaimed, very popular with book clubs. This one is something I would say akin to a historical mystery, but it also feels very much like literary fiction or just historical fiction straight up. There is a mystery. It is the story of who has murdered a wealthy landowner within this small town in Minnesota in the US in the 1950s. The book deals a lot with the history of the US in terms of racism, in terms of all of the wars. A lot of the men within the book have been to war and how that has affected them and how that has changed their lives and how it's changed the town. There's a lot of stuff in this book, a lot of big themes. It did make me cry, so good to know that. I really liked it. I didn't think the mystery was necessarily that mysterious. Like, I kind of had an idea of what had happened with the mystery, but that's not really a deal breaker for me. My only real quibble with this book is that it is very heavy in terms of its themes, in terms of its sexism and racism and xenophobia and all of the things that, definitely were around in 1950s America. But it also has this kind of like almost rose tinted nostalgia for small town life in America in the 1950s. And I don't know that I feel that the book really reconciled those two things enough for me personally. Those two things which stand kind of opposed to one another. I just wanted a little bit more. And I didn't love our main character, whose name is Brody. He's the sheriff of this town. I found him kind of unsympathetic. Maybe I wasn't supposed to find him sympathetic. I don't know. But again, I did actually really like it though. So this one, I don't have that much to say about it again because it's a mystery and I don't want to spoil the mystery for you. But if you enjoy historical mysteries, historical fiction, my comp for this is actually going to be To Kill a Mockingbird, because I think it hits a lot of the same themes as To Kill a Mockingbird. I don't think it goes quite as far. Obviously, it's hard to compare a book to one of the great classics of American literature, but That would be my comp title for this. I did really enjoy it. I did have my complaints, but in some ways they were minor. So 3.75 stars. Definitely would recommend checking this out if you are curious about the author. Okay, so that is every book that I read in May. I do want to give a quick shout out to all of the books I didn't get to in May. So we had Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson, was on my TBR, didn't get to it. Sunland Ascends by Josiah Bancroft. I read the first chapter, decided I wasn't in the mood. The Yiddish Policeman's Union by Michael Chabon. I read the first chapter of this one and almost read it, but chose The River We Remember instead. And I am kind of questioning whether I made the right choice when I was choosing a literary mystery to read. I think I might have liked this one better, but can always read it at a different month. And then I also didn't get to The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern, which I do really, really want to read, but I read a lot of fantasy this month. And toward the end of the month, I was like, I cannot read any more fantasy. That is all the fantasy that my head has room for this month. So there you have it. All the books that I read this month. I had a great, fantastic reading month, and I hope that you all did too. I do already have my TBR for June up on the channel, and I've already started and completed my first book for that TBR, so check that out if you have not already. Go ahead and leave me a comment and let me know what you read in May that either you really, really loved or you really, really didn't, because I would love to know. And if you're feeling quiet and you'd like to leave a comment to let me know you were here, go ahead and leave me the skull emoji for the devils. I hope that you all have a fantastic day. I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.